emergence of the Boko Haram terrorists group, as well as bandits and kidnappers in Nigeria, considerably changed the country's security situation, leaving panic in the minds of the populace. These and other security challenges confronting the nation tend to stretch the deployment of our security agencies, resources, and national security apparatus. Owing to the dynamics of this crisis, the Office of the National Security Advisor revised the National Counter-Terrorism Strategy, which I endorsed in August 2016. This doctrine is aimed at bridging the gap created by extensive deployment of security services through fostering collaboration amongst ministries, departments, and agencies, thereby ensuring greater successes in tackling national crisis. To this end, I am delighted to state that this is a significant milestone in recognition of the need for our collective efforts towards achieving coordinated, effective, and efficient national crisis management. I therefore urge the Office of the National Security Advisor to continue to play the coordinating role among crisis response stakeholders to achieve greater successes. I equally wish to thank the British government for its collaboration in the development of the doctrine, as well as the United States government for its support. Today marks 136 days since the terrible and cowardly attack was carried out on fellow citizens who are going about their normal lives by some criminal elements in our society, leading to the loss of lives of both train crew members and passengers. I express my deepest and most heartfelt condolences for this loss to you and your families, and we join you as a nation in your plight. It remains our solemn commitment, as demonstrated publicly and behind the scenes, that we will ensure each person currently being held captive is safely returned home to their families. There have been several actions taken from the moment the incident occurred on the 28th of March by various government officials to not only ascertain the extent of fatality and damage caused by the actions of these terrorists, but also how to best bring succor to the affected families and ensure that such an occurrence never again takes place in our country. I have been informed that at last count, there remain about 31 people in the hands of the kidnappers, and our determination is to work towards returning these 31 people to their families.
Well, thank you for staying with us. Well, there are those who would wonder, is this just another one on the list? Well, Garba Shehu, who joins us this morning, as you saw earlier, he is a Senior Special Assistant on Media and Publicity to the President. Thanks for joining us this morning, Mr. Shehu. Well, there are those who would ask, as I said, is this just another one on the list of all the strategies, all the doctrines that we had before now? How is this going to make any significant difference?
This is an emergency think tank. Emergency think tank that would respond in a collective way to natural disasters, to acts of terrorism, for all situations, emergency. It's something different because the response to emergency terrorism had been characterized in the past by isolated and ad hoc actions. Sometimes major agencies, major responsibilities, security agencies, operating in silos. This idea is to bring everyone to the table. And there are models elsewhere. The National Security Advisor did say this was set up in collaboration with the United States of America and the British government. They have in the UK what they call the British Cabinet Office briefing room, the COBRA. It brings everyone, connected to, emergency response. They share intelligence, they plan actions together, and they provide communication on an hour-by-hour basis, right up to the level of, in our own case, the president of the country. So yes, this is different, and we're hoping it will make bring a lot of changes to in the country.
So, Mr. Shehu, will this solve the problem of lack of synergy between or amongst the security agencies? And to be clear on that, will it specify who takes responsibility for the chain of command when they're to respond to either a security report that is in the form of intelligence or an actual threat that is being carried out, such that there is no rivalry, no competition amongst the security agencies?
Yes. Well, absolutely, there is clear planning for the involvement of everyone in an emergency situation. Specific arrangements, if assuming that, God forbid, assuming that say maybe terrorists around, say, an institution like National Assembly, who will do what and at what speed. The document is so elaborate that it states this is how many minutes we expect police helicopter to be on the scene. Fire service, this is how much you need to be at a given crisis location. So yes, everyone has a defined role and they have specified targets when they are expected to respond to a given situation.
Which of the agencies or documents that we had before now is going to have to, go into extinction, so to speak, with the advent of this doctrine? There is the National Security Strategy, there is the National Counterterrorism Strategy, and so many other initiatives like that. Is this doctrine one that encapsulates all of them, or it's a completely different one? Help us understand how exactly this will work with what we already have.
This process began back in 2014, and it just got renewed attention under the present administration. Now, is it an offshoot, or the National Security Strategy, which was launched recently, anticipate this? So you can say that this is adjunct national security strategy. As we begin to implement it, these things will begin to hold. So it's part of the overall structure that exists. However, you would say that the strategy, as the COBRA, as they call it in the UK, had been moribund. We had in the State House what they call CC4, Crisis Communication Center. in the State House. It is not designed to do the kind of things that the new document, plans for security coordination, security in situations.
Mr. Shehu, there are those who would wonder just how promising and how certain can we be that this is going to make any significant difference, because we are never, as many people opine, we are not in a dearth. We don't have a dearth of laws, of rules, of regulations, of strategies, of productive and progressive documents. The challenge has always been in not just implementation, but sustainable implementation of those ideas and ideals. So again, one wonders how this is going to make any sustainable difference. The National Counterterrorism Strategy, for instance, is a product of as far back as 2016. The Counterterrorism Center dates back at least 2013, and yet it would seem that these issues continue to develop, metamorphose into one thing or the other over time. So how is this going to be how is it going to decisively deal with the issues that keep shape-shifting?
Well, quite unlike maybe previous engagements, which allow for excuses and people maybe to not carry out assigned responsibility. This is a document that is so well defined, so well detailed, that, as I said, it says, given a flood emergency or a terrorist action, this is the right action within the given time for each one government agency. It holds you to account. You must be responsible for that action which you are supposed to take, the specific. And for everyone, technical people, military, service chiefs, intelligence chiefs, everyone rising up to the level of the president and commander-in-chief, who, in given situations, will invoke emergency powers when the situation is right. It's clearly spelled out, and I think there is no confusion who is to do what given time.
The assumption here then is the Office of the National Security Advisor that takes the lead. Is that correct?
Yes, the National Security Advisor is the lead agency.
Okay.
In terms of coordination.
Okay. But then that office, including that of the Counterterrorism Center, has operated in this same vein under the Office of the National Security Advisor. And there are those, and some of the things that you're saying now are contained in the document on the website of the CTC, .gov.ng, that these are the things that are supposed to happen under the Office of the National Security Advisor. Yet we have what we have. What was the problem?
No, but I'm sorry to say this crisis response document has just been concluded and delivered. So it could not have existed earlier than now. If there were allusions to some of these undertakings in previously existing documents, then ill-defined. They probably were fuzzy and were not specific. But this one has a digital specification as to who does what time, and therefore failure can easily be established against anyone that does not do their own duty.
So why has it taken this long, Mr. Shehu? There are those who would also refer, you've referred to the Cobra in the UK. There are those who would also refer to the Homeland Security in the US. It took just one attack, just one incident, and Homeland Security came to be. It's taken us, what, so many years? 7 years of this administration, and now we're just having this. Why is that?
Well, let's celebrate the fact that we have it, and that it has taken international collaboration to produce these documents. Perhaps left alone, we may never have had it. So I think that the important thing is, yes, it's important, it's now birthed, and then we move forward from here.
But it has taken a lot of costs, Mr. Shehu. Cost lives, cost property, cost a lot of money. cost a lot of investments, cost a lot of valuable security personnel in various parts of the country. So again, why so late?
This strategy, I'm not sure it in any way tells you that there will be zero crime, zero flood, zero. It doesn't say that. So the thing is that it's a mechanism for mitigation and to forestall and avert. We are hoping it will minimize incidents. It's unlikely that there is any policy or any document that can be produced that completely eliminate incidents such as disasters.
Okay. Just to be clear, Mr. Shehu, you say based on this document, the Office of the National Security Advisor will take the lead. So if it's going to take the lead then, which security agent would take responsibility, in terms of deployment of action and execution of, tackling any security threat?
Okay. Let me say that when saying National Security Advisor takes responsibility, this is insofar as the coordination is concerned. As I said, this strategy rises up to the level of the President and Commander-in-Chief. So he is involved, he's in the picture. And it says this is how he can be reached if this is the magnitude, of the crisis and the response that is required. And if he's needed to do a role, then that is when he has to do it. So all of the service chiefs, military heads, police, and all of them, they are all in the picture. And they all have specified responsibility at a given level.
Mr. Shehu, that doesn't quite answer the question. That doesn't answer the question. Would it be the Chief of Army Staff? Would it be the police? So which security agency will take the lead? We want specifics.
All of them will be on the table. All of them will be on the table. The National Security Advisor does the coordination, and the President of the country is in the picture.
That is still not sufficient explanation, Mr. Shehu, because there's a back and forth on, the confusion, especially when intelligence is got and it's supposed to be acted upon. There is the argument that, the service chiefs do not answer to the National Security Advisor. The police would say, oh, it's the responsibility of the police to take action when there's an internal insurrection. So is this document specific in terms of clearing the air on which agency takes responsibility for which nature of security threat?
Yes, I think it does.
So tell us what it states. We wish we had access to the document.
I will, if you have in fact, when it was launched by the President required that there should be maximum publicity for it. So I will send you a link as we finish this program, and the hard copy will be sent to Channel Television. You will have it.
Well, Mr. Shehu, so you've talked about the fact that a sizable number of agencies are going to be part of the whole process in executing this document in order to achieve the objectives it set out to. And since it's a relatively new document, you may want to first of all tell us which agencies specifically are going to be involved and how these ministries, departments, and agencies that are going to be working, this document have been taken on board on it.
Well, the emergency response agencies are fairly well known to all of us. It's not just the police, the Army, Air Force, Navy, the secret services, the fire services, national emergency management agencies. At the technical level, at the cabinet level, which again, you and I have both mentioned, the equivalent of the COBRA, is a cabinet level also response team. So I believe people at lower positions than the heads of the agencies, technical people, will be seated. In fact, the existing mechanism in place in the State House is manned on a daily basis by representatives of various agencies. Now, they do their own, and then they escalate their own resolutions, intelligence that they have, levels of their own commanders, the service chiefs, and all of these response agencies. And then from there, if it is warranted, it rises to the cabinet level with the president of the country presiding.
Mr. Shehu, the NCMD is said to be a revised subset of the National Counter-Terrorism Strategy. And the National Counter-Terrorism Strategy has 5 work streams, which is to forestall, secure, identify, prepare, and implement. Is that to say that when there is intelligence, the NCMD does not state exactly or does not make provision for the execution of action to forestall?
No, it has. Actually, that mainly is why it is there, because intelligence is anticipatory, and so therefore, when that information is made available, it is shared, and then if action is warranted, it is acted upon. So yes, you are correct. It's a revised offshoot or subsect of the national security strategy, and I guess it's a welcome, it's a welcome birth of a major agency for security in the country.
Say the national counterterrorism strategy is obsolete, and this is the new document. Is that correct?
No. She just said, and I agreed with her, that is a subset. So the national security strategy covers all of the picture. Everyone is there, the entire security spectrum. But there are sections, subsections, and this is one such section.
Okay. Talking about crisis management, what kinds of crisis are we talking about here? Does it include the kidnapping, the banditry, and other violent crimes that we're talking about, that we've been dealing with for years?
Yeah, of course it does. It does. Terrorism is there. It does include, as I said, natural disasters, earthquakes, floods, and what have you, natural disasters. So yes, you are correct.
Okay. So the reason for asking that question, Mr. Shehu, is because all of these issues are more local than federal. So one wonders, what's the carry-along methodology with the states and the local government authorities across the country? Because unless that is there, I mean, operating this document from the center, from the capital city in Abuja, may not achieve the desired results or play the desired roles in a sustainable way. So what's the plan to carry along the states and the local government authorities?
Oh, you're absolutely correct there, because this new document actually envisages support for local emergencies, support for local emergency management. So nobody should go and lie back and think local government needs to do nothing, or state governments don't need to do anything. No, everyone will continue with their roles, but you need a big brother to help you. So that's what we're about. They will be interested in how it is carried about there, and how much support comes.
Well, we asked the question about ministries, departments, and agencies the other time, and you just gave an explanation. But we're trying to look at the practical workability of this, so it doesn't go the way of other documents that it is succeeding or that it is there to improve on. Has there been any conversation with state governments, for instance, from the Office of the National Security Advisor? Has there been any conversation with any body of local government authorities in the country to ensure that this document plays the role it is supposed to play? Or are you saying that this doctrine hasn't taken off?
No, I would assume safely. I will assume safely that such interaction will have taken place. Because, as a matter of fact, this document also is a role for the private citizens and the private sector, because there could be roles that would be played by non-governmental institutions. So was there a wide-scale consultation? So perhaps that's why it took all the time to produce. But it is inconceivable that this could have been produced without input stakeholders as important as the states are.
Mr. Shehu, I asked a question about carry-along methodology of other security agencies and state governments, particularly because most crimes are local, which is why I want to follow up by asking, does it also state a work strategy and methodology for state security networks that have been established by state governments to respond to major security breaches in most states of the Federation?
I would assume that is the case. I probably recommend a deeper reading of the document to your own selves, to all of us, so that we know that specific role is played out in the state.
So you're sure about the Army, the Air Force, Navy, the police, but you're not quite sure that it incorporates a work plan for state security agencies?
Absolutely. And as I said earlier, it says to you, if this incident happens, the time of response is counted in minutes. That if this incident should happen at so-so, police must have, say, 10 minutes, 5 minutes to be there. Fire service, 3, 4, 5, that's the kind of thing you have there. So it is detailed and specific. And I hope that we'll make available copies to just every citizen of the country so that they understand how these things work, because it is for all of us.
Well, Mr. Shehu, I'm still at a loss because, I mean, if you are very certain of federal agencies being a part of this, and you're not quite sure that local authorities at the state and local government levels have been incorporated into this, but you just assumed, as you said, that already places a question on whether or not this document is going to be as effective as we want it to be.
No, but I can't sit before you here and pretend to you that I've read the entire book, which was launched only 3-4 days ago. I had had my reading, I had seen it, I had scanned through, I had spoken to key people, National Security Advisor, their officials, and all of these things. So I would recommend a deeper reading for you and for myself so that we get a full understanding of what all that it contains.
Okay. Well, there is more more issues to raise on this when we return from this break. So. Conversation with Mr. Garba Shehu continues with my colleagues in Abuja.
Well, yeah, thank you, Ayo. Well, Mr. Shehu, good morning. And just like every right-thinking person, we are interested in ensuring that things work, there's peace. And so when this document was launched, we had to approach very senior security personnel across different agencies to just find out what they think, because they will be the ones who will operationalize largely this document. And some of them thought, well, what they see from this document is that it deals with reacting or responding to incidents, as it were. And if I went going through it, they thought that the government had on its mind terrorism and banditry. Okay, I think we lost Mr. Shehu, so hopefully we'll try and see how we can get that connection back and ensure that at least government gets some sort of feedback on this matter, because, I mean, when they come up with these documents, they like to know that it will work and that they took the right decisions. And that's part of the reasons why we went to town on this one. So it'll be interesting to hear what they think, because, I mean, it was just last week where we looked at this matter, how the Counterterrorism Prevention Agency, the law actually of 2022 was, I mean, we're waiting to see Why is it taking us so long? Little did we know that this was going to be launched. Even afterwards, they thought there's still a question mark, some aspect that are missing in terms of analyzing the intelligence, quote unquote, because they thought what they say is intelligence is largely information which is not analyzed. And if it were to be analyzed, they like to see different agencies sit together and come up with a central strategy to approach it. Thereafter, it can then be called proper intelligence. So we don't know if that happens.
Well, people always say that, well, not people, but I mean, what the security experts always say is that information is not intelligence unless it is actionable and it is specific. So unless you're able to make sense of it, it remains what it is. It's just information. If you say, oh, there's going to be an attack where, what time, do you know by who, etc. You know, those are the kinds of things that eventually make it intelligence that is actionable. But it will be interesting to see how this brings all these other agencies together. Yeah. It's taken us this long to be able to come up with this, as Buki mentioned in her question. I think it was Buki or Ayo. Ayo most likely. 7 years is a long time in this administration to have come up with this. I'm sure that when the National Counterterrorism Act was enacted, maybe that's what people thought was going to be this. But even that needed, you know, it was a body of laws talking about what will constitute terrorism, etc., and what needed to be done. But even that needed an agency to be able to prosecute it. You have to ask, who has the prosecutorial powers for counterterrorism? Is it the DSS? Is it the military? We understand doesn't have that. The police certainly should have a lead role. But we all know that the police has been dealing with capacity issues in recent times, and we haven't quite strengthened the hand of the police enough to be able to handle a lot of things that have to do with internal security. So were they thinking of the police? Were they thinking of the DSS, etc.? And then who really takes the lead? I think you were highlighting the fact that this is dealing with incidences. When it comes to intelligence gathering, for instance, where is that going to happen? But Chamberlain, I'll throw it back to you to quickly put your question across.
Well, Mr. Shehu, we lost you for a bit, and so good to know that you're back. But we were just talking about some of the feedback that top security personnel who are going to largely carry out or execute this document, the feedback that they gave to us when we approached them. Some of them did say that the document deals with responding or reacting to incidences or crisis. And from what they saw with this document, they thought that while the government was developing the documents, they had on its mind terrorism and banditry. And that's why there's that doctrine, which is a subset of NAC test. But what they say we need to do is that in addition to this document, we need a national crisis prevention policy and/or strategy for a national community safety policy strategy, such that all those agencies can be at the same table and take certain actions working together. Do you think this document can do that?
From my own understanding, which is, I want to say again, quite a superficial one, one, it is envisaged that there will be inter-agency collaboration. So what this means is that the agencies of government that are responsible for intelligence gathering would be seated in the same room with those agencies of government that carry out actions. Not only that, you know, it is envisaged that this new, organization or plan would undertake stress analysis. And when you do stress analysis, it presupposes that you probably are anticipating, you're looking at possibilities of crisis in given areas, and you are proposing what to do. And the key action points, very clearly stated, include, of course, that there is a communication component. This, of course, captures all the concerns about intelligence gathering, dissemination, sharing of of information and all of that. And there's also the action component. So there's a need to do a preemptive strike or to do a counter strike. Then that is so I have a feeling that, as I said to Ayo earlier on, we probably need to pay attention, read all of the document, and to understand it, the full implications of what it contains. I guess these concerns your consultants or advisors are suggesting, I guess, are sufficiently addressed by the document.
Let me ask, how is it going to make a difference with the kidnapped victims along the Abuja-Kaduna Expressway, I beg your pardon, the Kaduna-Abuja train attack? We know that some of the victims are still in captivity. You have granted an interview. I think that interview was granted in Hausa, and it's been widely translated, showing government's efforts, and it looks like there was a lot that went on behind the scenes, and there was a break of trust somewhere. But how will a document like this make a difference in being able to get back those who still remain within the custody of the bandits?
Interagency collaboration, interagency action. So much is happening in the last few days and weeks since the president, read the Riot Act to the service chiefs. It's very clear that new strategies are already in place. New initiatives, new thinking is being brought to all of the things concerning those captives and all of the issues concerning security, banditry, terrorism, kidnapping in those other areas. The military have done changes of leading commanders in the frontline areas. As we have seen, they are putting together formidable, fighting forces. They've been trained for some time.
Solutions like this, sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Shehu. Solutions like this usually come to the fore as a result of something. Maybe they're meant to cure something. Did we notice that interagency cooperation was missing? Is that why we have not been able to successfully rescue the people who have been kidnapped by this terrorist? That's one. And I was also hoping that you would speak to the interview which you granted that has gone widely translated. Did you really give the backstory in that interview? Were those your words?
Well, they were my words, all right. And there are two ways that a rescue of that nature can be done. Either through negotiation, non-kinetic, or through the use of weapons, lethal force, as the president said he was not inclined to do. So if you choose to use the lethal force, you must be prepared for also consequences that follow, included unintended consequences. So if you are asking me whether there was no collaboration of this sort, I would say that even within the army, for instance, I think they had been overstretched over the entire landscape of the country. I was going to say, before you cut me, that, for instance, they have trained special fighting forces. The special forces have been scattered in many parts of the country, in south, in the northeast, north central areas, and many crisis areas. And what they're doing now is they're bringing all of them together into brigade command. In fact, they have brought them together, into brigade formations. 8 divisions in Sokoto, 1 division in Kaduna. And the effect is already being felt on the ground. The use of air power enormously, successful, decimating many of them. So we're getting somewhere. We are at a point where we have reached a turning point in this. And I believe that with support of fellow
All right, Mr. Shehu, just one more thing before you go. Let's just put this in so that we can wrap up and move on to the next item here, as quickly as possible if you can. After the Kuje jailbreak, the House of Reps, they had a session, and therein, the Speaker was talking about how there were 44 security reports, intelligence reports about that attack from the DSS, and no action was taken. Has that come to the attention of the President?
I think it is wrong to say no action has been taken. My understanding is that the military, for instance, is already court-martialing some of the elements. So if there was no willingness to fight or to resist, as was seen, consequences will follow.
All right, then, Mr. Garba, Shehu, we do thank you very much indeed for your time this morning.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
We're back in a moment. Stay with us.